It's day 4 of the 2018 Utah legislative session, and things are getting very busy. Some of the things that happened today. This was Charter School Day on the Hill, and I'm a founder of the Monticello Academy, so it was nice to see all the charter schools on the Hill. I'm a very pro school choice proponent, and then I want to talk about a meeting I was in this morning where a proposal for changes to mass transit was discussed. And there's some assumptions that I have some issues with. I just want to outline them and then invite you to let me know what you think. But one of the assumptions is that this valley is going to double in population in the next 50 years or so. What we don't ever take into account when we build that assumption, we base it on how much we've grown at what rate, and if there are no other intervening factors, we're going to have 6 million people in this valley. What we don't ever take into account is the fact that there is a point where this valley so drastically changes with an increase in population that it's no longer attractive for the same reasons that it had historically been attractive for. And so you have to wonder, will you really see 6 million people come here? And so I think that we start with that flawed assumption, and I don't know how you get around it because we have some of the best economists and demographers in our state that look at this information and say we need to prepare for a doubling of our population. But that's not really how it works in practicality. But one of the things this transportation policy is going to do is start to kind of double down on mass transit. And I have very mixed feelings about mass transit. What we find is a bunch of empty train cars, very underutilized, very expensive, very inflexible, and we have some of the leading sort of think tanks in the world are saying mass transit's obsolete. In the sharing economy, we have more people opting to call an Uber than spending 2 hours each way on a train wherever they want to go. And people are figuring out that it's doesn't cost much more, sometimes the same, to call Uber and get there. In the world of autonomous vehicles, there are estimations that mass transit will be obsolete except for a few key, highly densely populated cities like LA and New York by 2030. That's around the corner. So they're looking at what states have invested in mass transit and looking at how long in the future we will be paying for the indebtedness, the bonds, retirement funds, things like that, decades and decades after we've shut them down. So due to a lack of use. So that's a concern to me because in the dozens and dozens of hours of meetings I spent discussing transportation, mass transit, that factor didn't ever really come in. The fact that people aren't really riding. And so I think before we double down on supporting the mass transit system, we need to really understand what those projections look like. But along with doing that, one thing that kind of made me nervous is cities 2 years ago had the ability to go to their ballot box and vote on increasing their sales tax, and some of that sales tax would support the mass transit and some other transportation related things. But Salt Lake County voted no, and that's where a lot of that mass transit exists. So this proposal is now going to force the counties that voted no to change their minds. And I will continue to oppose a sales tax increase in Salt Lake County, especially for something that currently is insolvent, not managed well, and really is likely to not be needed far before we're able to pay off the debt associated with that. So that's just an interesting thing to me. As I spoke to people about this today, I reiterated that we really need to remember our principles. When looking at some of these big projects, what are our principles? We should absolutely remember that free markets are the best way to deal with things like economic growth and development and having a thriving society and community to live in. When government inserts itself, frequently messes it up, and it would be my preference to let the markets drive development, let the markets drive what we do with housing, with transit, and things like that. I think if we remember our principles, remember that as a conservative, as I am, a conservative Republican, I want government to do less, not more. I want more local control than less. So anyway, it was a busy day, reminding ourselves about principles.